Sugar. From Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. This article is about the class of sweet flavored substances used as food. For common table sugar, see sucrose. For other uses, see sugar disambiguation. Lump sugar redirects here. For the South Korean film, see lump sugar. Sugar is the generic name for sweet-tasting, soluble carbohydrates, many of which are used in food. The various types of sugar are derived from different sources. Simple sugars are called monosaccharides and include glucose, also known as dextrose, fructose, and galactose. Table sugar or granulated sugar refers to sucrose, a disaccharide of glucose and fructose in the body. Sucrose is hydrolyzed into fructose and glucose. Sugars are found in the tissues of most plants, but sucrose is especially concentrated in sugarcane and sugar beet, making them ideal for efficiently commercial extraction to make refined sugar. Sugarcane originated in tropical Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia and is known from before 6000 BP. Sugar beet was first described in writing 1575 by Oliver de Ceres and originated in southwestern, northern, and southeastern Europe along the Atlantic coast and the Mediterranean Sea in North Africa, Macaronesia to Western Asia. In 2016, the combined world production of those two crops was about 2 billion tons. Other disaccharides include maltose from malted grain and lactose from milk. Longer chains of sugar molecules are called oligosaccharides or polysaccharides. Some other chemical substances, such as glycerol and sugar alcohols, may have a sweet taste but are not classified as sugar. Sucrose is used in prepared foods, e.g., example cookies and cakes. It is sometimes added to commercially available beverages and may be used by people as a sweetener for foods, e.g., example toast and cereal, and beverages, e.g., example coffee and tea. The average person consumes about 24 kilograms, 53 pounds of sugar each year, or 33.1 kilograms, 73 pounds in developed countries, equivalent to over 260 food calories per day. As sugar consumption grew in the latter part of the 20th century, researchers began to examine whether a diet high in sugar, especially refined sugar, was damaging to human health. Excessive consumption of sugar has been implicated in the onset of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, dementia, and tooth decay. Numerous studies have tried to clarify those implications, but with varying results, mainly because of the difficulty of finding populations for use as controls that consume little or no sugar. In 2015, the World Health Organization recommended that adults and children reduce their intake of free sugars to less than 10% and encouraged a reduction to below 5% of their total energy intake. Etymology. The etymology reflects the spread of the commodity from Sanskrit sankara, meaning ground or candied sugar, came Persian shaker, then the 12th century French sucre, and the English sugar. The English word jaggery, a coarse brown sugar made from date palm sap or sugarcane juice, has a similar etymological origin. Portuguese jagara from the Malayalam kakara, which is from the Sanskrit sarkara. History. Ancient world to Rem, Renaissance. Asia. Sugar has been produced in the Indian subcontinent since ancient times, and its cultivation spread from there into modern-day Afghanistan through the Khyber Pass. It was not plentiful or cheap in early times, and in most parts of the world honey was more often used for sweetening. Originally, people chewed raw sugarcane to extract its sweetness. Sugarcane was a native of tropical Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia. Different spices seem to have originated from different locations, with Saccharum barberry originating in India, and S. edule and S. officinarum coming from New Guinea. One of the earliest historical references to sugarcane is in Chinese manuscripts dating to 8th century BCE, which state that the use of sugarcane originated in India. In the tradition of Indian medicine, Ayurveda, the sugarcane is known by the name Iksu, and the sugarcane juice is known as Fanita. Its varieties, synonyms, and characteristics are defined in narratives such as the Bhavaprakasa 1.6.23 group of sugar canes. Sugar remained relatively unimportant until the Indians discovered methods of turning sugarcane juice into granulated crystals that were easier to store and to transport. Crystallized sugar was discovered by the time of the Emperor Guptas around the 5th century CE. In the local Indian language, these crystals were called Kanda Devanagari. Kanda, which is the source of the word candy. Indian sailors who carried clarified butter and sugar as supplies introduced knowledge of sugar along the various trade routes they traveled. Traveling Buddhist monks took sugar crystallization methods to China during the reign of Harsha R. 606 through 647. In North India, Indian envoys in Tang, China taught methods of cultivating sugarcane after Emperor Taizong of Tang R. 626 through 649 made known his interest in sugar. China established its first sugarcane plantations in the 7th century. Chinese documents confirm at least two missions to India, initiated in 647 CE to obtain technology for sugar refining. In the Indian subcontinent, the Middle East, and China, sugar became a staple of cooking and desserts. Europe. Nerchus, admiral of Alexander um, of Macedonia, knew sugar during the year 325 BC because of his participation in the campaign of India led by Alexander. Urane Anabasis, the Greek physician Pedanius Dioscorides in the 1st century CE described sugar in his medical treatise De Materia Medica, and Pliny the Elder, a 1st century CE Roman, described sugar in his Natural History. Sugar is made in Arabia as well, but Indian sugar is better. It is a kind of honey found in cane, white as gum, and it crunches between the teeth. It comes in lumps the size of a hazelnut. Sugar is used only for medical purposes. Crusaders brought sugar back to Europe after the campaigns in the Holy Land, where they encountered caravans carrying sweet salt. Early in the 12th century, Venice acquired some villages near Tyre and set up estates to produce sugar for export to Europe. It supplemented the use of honey, which had previously been the only available sweetener. Crusade chronicler William of Tyre, writing in the late 12th century, described sugar as a very necessary for the use and health of mankind. In the 15th century, Venice was the chief sugar refining and distribution center in Europe. There was a drastic change in the mid-15th century when Madeira and the Canary Islands were settled from Europe, and sugar grown there. After this, an all-consuming passion for sugar swept through society as it became far more easily available. though initially still very expensive. By 1492, Madeira was producing over 3 million pounds weight of sugar annually. Genoa, one of the centers of distribution, became known for candied fruit, while Venice specialized in pastries, sweets, candies, and sugar sculpture. Sugar was considered to have valuable medical properties as a warm food under prevailing categories, being helpful to the stomach to cure cold diseases and soothe lung complaints. A feast given in Tours in 1457 by Gaston de Foix, which is probably the best and most complete account we have of a late medieval banquet, includes the first mention of sugar sculptures as the final food brought in was a heraldic menagerie sculpture in sugar, lions, stags, monkeys, each holding in paw or break or beak the arms of the Hungarian king. Other recorded grand feasts in the Cascades following included similar pieces. Originally, the sculptures seem to have been eaten in the meal, but later they became merely table decorations. The most elaborated, elaborate, elaborate, called triumphi. Several significant sculptors are known to have produced them. In some cases, their preliminary drawings survive. Early ones were in brown sugar, partly cast in molds, with the final touches carved. They continued to be used until at least the coronation banquet for Edward V11 of the United Kingdom in 1903. Among other sculptures, every guest was given a sugar crown to take away. Modern history. See also triangular trade. In August 1492, Christopher Columbus stopped at La Gomora in the Canary Islands for wine and water, intending to stay only 4 days. He became romantically involved with the governor of the island, Beatriz de Bobadilla y Osorio, and stayed a month. When he finally sailed, she gave him cuttings of sugar cane, which he carried to the New World. This was the introduction of this plant. The cuttings were planted in the first sugar cane harvest in Hispaniola took place in 1501. Many sugar mills had been constructed in Cuba and Jamaica by the 1520s. The Portuguese took sugarcane to Brazil. By 1540, there were 800 cane sugar mills in Santa Catarina Island and another 2,000 on the north coast of Brazil, Demerara, and Suriname. Sugar was a luxury in Europe until the 18th century, when it became more widely available. It became highly popular, and by the 19th century, sugar came to be considered a necessity. This evaluation of taste and demand for sugar as an essential food ingredient resulted in major economic and social changes. Demand drove, in part, the colonization of tropical islands and areas where labor-intensive sugarcane plantations and sugar manufacturing could be successful. The demand for cheap labor to perform the labor-intensive cultivation and processing increased the demand for the slave trade from Africa, in particular West Africa. After slavery was abolished, the demand for workers in the British Caribbean colonies were filled by indentured laborers from Indian subcontinent, in particular India. Millions of slave and indentured laborers were brought into the Caribbean and the Americas, Indian Ocean colonies, Southeast Asia, Pacific Islands, and East Africa in Natal. Thus, the modern ethnic mix of many nations that have been settled in the last 2 centuries have been influenced by the demand of sugar. Sugar also led to some industrialization of areas where sugar cane was grown. For example, in the 1790s, Lieutenant J. Patterson of the Bengal establishment promoted to the British government the idea that sugar cane could grow in British India, where it had started, with many advantages and at least expense than in the West Indies. As a result, sugar factories were established in Bihar in eastern India. During the Napoleonic Wars, sugar beet production increased in continental Europe because of the difficulty of importing sugar when shipping was subject to blockade. blockade. By 1880, the sugar beet was the main source of sugar in Europe. It was also cultivated in Lincolnshire and other parts of England, although the United Kingdom continued to import the main part of its sugar from its colonies. Until the late 19th century, sugar was purchased in loaves, which had to be cut using implements called sugar nips. In later years, granulated sugar was more usually sold in bags. Sugar cubes were produced in the 19th century. The first inventor of a process to produce sugar in cube form was Moravian Jakub Christoph Rad, director of a sugar company in Dacis. He began sugar cube production after being granted a 5-year patent for the process on January 23, 1843. Henry Tate of Tate and Lye was another early manufacturer of sugar cubes at his refineries in Liverpool and London. Tate purchased a patent for sugar cube manufacture from German Eugen Langen, who in 1872 had invented a different method of processing of sugar cubes. Sugar was rationed during World War One and more sharply during World War Two. This led to the development of use of various artificial sweeteners. Chemistry. Main article: carbohydrates. Scientifically, sugar loosely refers to a number of carbohydrates such as monosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides or oligosaccharides. Monosaccharides are also called simple sugars, the most important being glucose. Most monosaccharides have a formula that conforms to CnH2nOn, with N between 3 and 7 deoxyribose being an exception. Glucose has the molecular formula C6H12O6. The names of typical sugars end with minus OSE, as in glucose, and fructose. Sometimes such words may also refer to any types of carbohydrates soluble in water. The acylic mono minus and disaccharides contain either aldehyde groups of ketone groups. These carbon-oxygen double bonds C=0 are the reactive centers. All saccharides with more than one ring in their structure result from two or more monosaccharides joined by glucosidic bonds, with the resultant loss of a molecule of water, H2O, per bond. Monosaccharides in a closed chain form can form glycosidic bonds with other monosaccharides, creating disaccharides such as sucrose and polysaccharides such as starch. Enzymes must hydrolyze or otherwise break these glycosidic bonds before such compounds become metabolized. After digestion and absorption, the principal monosaccharides present in the blood and internal tissues include glucose, fructose, and galactose. Many pentoses and hexoses can form ring structures in these closed chain forms. The aldehyde or ketone group remains non non-free. So many of the reactions typical of these groups cannot occur. Glucose in solution exists mostly in the ring form at equilibrium, with less than 0.1% of the molecules in the open chain form. Natural polymers. Biopolymers of sugars are common in nature. Through photosynthesis, plants produce glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate G3P, a phosphated 3-carbon sugar that is used by the cell to make monosaccharides such as glucose C6H12O6 or as in cane and beet, sucrose, C12H22O11. Monosaccharides may be further converted into structural polysaccharides such as cellulose and pectin for cell wall construction, or into energy reserves in the form of storage polysaccharides such as starch or insulin. Starch, consisting of two different polymers of glucose, is a readily degradable form of chemical energy stored by cells and can be converted to other types of energy. Another polymer of glucose is cellulose, which is a linear chain composed of several hundred or thousand glucose units. It is used by plants as a structural component in their cell walls. Humans can digest cellulose only to a very limited extent, though ruminants can do so with the help of symbiotic bacteria in their gut. DNA and RNA are built up of the monosaccharides deoxyribose and ribose, respectively. Deoxyribose has the formula C5H10O4 and the ribose the formula C5H10O5. Flammability and heat response. Because sugars burn easily when exposed to flame, the handling of sugars risks dust explosion. The risk of explosion is higher when the sugar has been milled to superfine texture, such as for use in chewing gum. The 2008 Georgia sugar refinery explosion, which killed 14 people and injured 40 and destroyed most of the refinery, was caused by the ignition of sugar dust. In its culinary use, exposing sugar to heat causes caramelization as the process occurs. Volatile chemicals such as diacetyl are released, producing the characteristic caramel flavor. Types: monosaccharides, fructose, galactose, and glucose are all simple sugars. Monosaccharides with the general formula C6H12O6. They have 5 hydroxyl groups minus OH and a carbonyl group C equals 0 and are cyclic when dissolved in water. They each exist as several isomers with dextro negative, minus, and lavaro rotatory forms that cause polarized light to diverge to the right or the left. Fructose, or fruit sugar, occurs naturally in fruits, some root vegetables, cane sugar, and honey, and is the sweetest of the sugars. It is one of the components of sucrose, or table sugar. It is used as a high fructose syrup, which is manufactured from hydrolyzed cornstarch that has been processed to yield corn syrup with enzymes then added to convert part of the glucose into fructose. Galactose generally does not occur in the free state, but is a constituent with glucose of the disaccharide lactose or milk sugar. It is less sweet than glucose. It is a component of the antigens found on the surface of red blood cells that determine blood groups. Glucose, dextrose, or grape sugar occurs naturally in fruits and plant juices and is the primary product of photosynthesis. Most ingested carbohydrates are converted into glucose during digestion, and it is the form of sugar that is transported around the bodies of animals in the bloodstream. Glucose syrup is a liquid form of glucose that is widely used in the manufacture of foodstuffs. It can be manufactured from starch by enzymatic hydrolysis. Disaccharides, lactose, maltose, and saccharose are all compound sugars. Disaccharides with the general formula C12H22O11. They are formed by the combination of two monosaccharide molecules with the exclusion of a molecule of water. Lactose is the naturally occurring sugar found in milk. A molecule of lactose is formed by the combination of a molecule of galactose with a molecule of glucose. It is broken down when consumed. It is consumed into its constituent parts by the enzyme lactase during digestion. Children have this enzyme, but some adults no longer form it and they are unable to digest lactose. Maltose is formed during the germination of certain grains, the most notable being barley, which is converted into malt, the source of the sugar's name. A molecule of maltose is formed by the combination of two molecules of glucose. It is less sweet than glucose, fructose, or saccharose. It is formed in the body during the digestion of starch by the enzyme amylase. It is itself broken down during digestion by the enzyme maltase. Saccharose is found in the stems of sugarcane and roots of sugar beet. It also occurs naturally alongside fructose and glucose in other plants, in particular fruits and some fruits such as carrots. The different proportions of sugars found in these foods determines the range of sweetness experienced when eating them. A molecule of saccharose is formed by the combination of a molecule of glucose with a molecule of fructose. After being eaten, sucrose is split into its constituent parts during digestion by a number of enzymes known as saccharases. Sources: the sugar contents of common fruits and vegetables are presented in Table 1. The fructose to fructose plus glucose ratio is calculated by con- including the fractose and glucose coming from the sucrose. The a the carbohydrate figure is calculated in the USDA database and does not always correspond to the sum of the sugars, the starch, and the dietary fiber pro- production. See also list of sugars. Due to the rising demand, sugar production in general increased some 14% over the period 2009 to 2018. The largest imports were China, Indonesia, and the United States. Sugar beet. In 2016, global production of sugar beets was 277 million tons, led by Russia with 19% of the world total table. The sugar beet became a major source of sugar in the 19th century when methods for extracting the sugar became available. It is a biennial plant, a cultivated variety of Beta vulgaris in the family Amaranthaceae, the tuberose root of which contains a high proportion of sucrose. It is cultivated as a root crop in temperate regions with adequate rain, adequate rainfall and requires a fertile soil. The crop is harvested mechanically in the autumn and the crown of leaves and excess soil removed. The roots do not deteriorate rapidly and may be left in the field for some weeks before being transported to the processing plant where the crop is washed and sliced. In the sugar extraction by diffusion, milk of lime is added to the raw juice with calcium carbonate. After water is evaporated by boiling the syrup under vacuum, the syrup is cooled and seeded with sugar crystals. The white sugar that crystallizes can be separated in a centrifuge and dried, requiring no further refining. Sugarcane. Global production of sugarcane in 2016 was 1.9 billion tons, with Brazil producing 41% of the world total and India 18% table. Sugarcane refers to any of several species or their hybrids of giant grasses in the genus Saccharum in the family Poaceae. They have been cultivated in tropical climates in the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia over centuries for the sucrose found in their stems. A great expansion in sugarcane production took place in the 18th century with the establishment of slave plantations in the Americas. The use of slavery for the labor-intensive process resulted in sugar production, enabling prices cheap enough for most people to buy. Me- Mechanization reduced some labor needs. Mechanization reduced some labor needs, but in the 21st century, cultivation and production relied on low-wage laborers. Sugarcane requires a frost-free climate with sufficient rainfall during the growing season to make full use of the plant's substantial growth potential. The crop is harvested mechanically or by hand, chopped into lengths, and conveyed rapidly to the processing plant, commonly known as a sugar mill, where it is either milled and the juice extracted with water extracted by diffusion. The water The juice is clarified with lime and heated to destroy enzymes. The resulting thin syrup is concentrated in a series of evaporators, after which further water is removed. The resulting supersaturated solution is seeded with sugar crystals, facilitating crystal formation and drying. Molasses is a byproduct of the process, and the fiber from the stems, known as bagasse, is burned to provide energy for the sugar extraction process. The crystals of raw sugar have a sticky brown coating and either can be used as they are, can be bleached by sulfur oxide, or can be treated in a carbonation process to produce a whiter product. About 2,500 liters, 660 US gallons of irrigation water is needed for every 1 kilogram, 2.2 pounds of sugar produced. Refining. See also sugar refinery, non-centrifugal cane sugar, and white sugar. Refined sugar is made from raw sugar that has undergone a refining process to remove the molasses. Raw sugar is sucrose, which is extracted from sugar cane or sugar beet. While raw sugar can be consumed, the refining process removes unwanted tastes and results in refined sugar or white sugar. The sugar may be transported in bulk to the country where it will be used, and the refining process often takes place there. The first stage is known as affination and involves immersing the sugar crystals in a concentrated syrup that softens and removes the sticky brown coating without dissolving them. The crystals are then separated from the liquor and dissolved in water. The resulting syrup is treated either by a carbonatation or by a phosphatation process. Both involve the precipitation of a fine solid in the syrup, and when this is filtered out, many of the impurities are removed at the same time. Removal of color is achieved by using either a granular activated carbon or an ion exchange resin. The sugar syrup is concentrated by boiling and then cooled and seeded with sugar crystals, causing the sugar to crystallize out. The liquor is spun off in a centrifuge, and the white crystals are dried in hot air and ready to be packed or used. The surplus liquor is made into refiners' molasses. The International Commission for Uniform Methods of Sugar Analysis sets standards for the measurement of the purity of refined sugar, known as ICUMCS MSA numbers. Lower numbers indicate a higher level of purity in the refined sugar. Refined sugar is widely used for industrial needs for higher quality. Refined sugar is pure ICUMSA below 300, and then raw sugar ICUMSA over 1,500. The level of purity associated with the colors of sugar expressed by standard number ICUMSA. Smaller ICUMSA numbers indicate a higher purity of sugar. Forms and uses. Brown sugars are granulated sugars either containing residual molasses or with the grains deliberately coated with molasses to produce a light or dark colored sugar. They are used in baked goods, confectionery, and toffees. Granulated sugars are used at the table to sprinkle on foods and to sweeten hot drinks, coffee, and tea, and in home baking to add sweetness and texture to baked products, cookies, and cakes, and desserts. pudding, and ice cream. They are also used as a preservative to prevent microorganisms from growing, perishable food from spoiling, as in candied fruits, jams, and marmalades. Invert sugars and syrups are blended to manufacturer's specifications and are used in breads, cakes, and beverages for adjusting sweetness, aiding moisture retention, and avoiding crystallization of sugars. Liquid sugars are strong syrups consisting of 67% granulated sugar dissolved in water. They are used in the food processing of a wide range of products, including beverages, hard candy, ice cream, and jams. Low-calorie sugars and artificial sweeteners are often made of maltodextrin with added sweeteners. Maltodextrin is an easily digestible synthetic polysaccharide consisting of short chains of molecules and is made by the partial hydrolysis of starch. Milled sugars are known as confectioner sugar and powdered sugar are grown to a fine powder. They are used as a powdered sugar, also known as icing sugar or confectionery sugar for dusting foods and in baking and confectionery. Molasses is commonly used to make rum, and sugar byproducts are used to make ethanol for fuel. Polyols are sugar alcohols and are used in chewing gum where a sweet flavor is required that lasts for a prolonged time in the month. Screen sugars are crystalline products separated according to the size of the grains that are used for decorative table sugars, for blending in dry mixes, and in baking and confectionery. Sugar cubes, sometimes called sugar lumps, are white or brown granulated sugars, lightly steamed and pressed together in block shape. They are used to sweeten drinks. Sugarloaf was the usual cone form in which refined sugar was produced and sold until the late 19th century. This shape is still used in Germany for preparation of Fürstengebel, as well as Iran and Morocco. Morocco. Syrups and treacles are dissolved in invert sugars heated to develop the characteristic flavors. Treacles have added molasses. They are used in a range of baked goods and confectionery, including toffees and licorin, licorice. In winemaking, fruit sugars are converted into alcohol by a fermentation process. If the must formed by pressing the fruit has a low sugar content, additional sugar may be added to raise the alcohol content of the wine in a process called chaptalization. In the production of sweet wines, fermentation may be halted before it has run its full course, leaving behind some residual sugar that gives the wine its sweet taste. Consumption. In most parts of the world, sugar is an important part of the human diet, making food more palatable and providing food energy. After cereals and vegetable oil, sugar derived from sugarcane and beet provided more kilocalories per capita per day on average than other food groups. According to one source, per capita consumption of sugar in 2016 was highest in the United States, followed by Germany and the Netherlands. Nutrition and flavor. Brown and white granulated sugar are 97% to nearly 100% carbohydrates, respectively, with less than 2% water and no dietary fiber, protein, or fat table. Brown sugar contains a moderate amount of iron, 50% of the reference daily intake, in a 100-gram amount, see table, but a typical serving of 4 grams, 1 teaspoon, would provide 15 calories and a negligible amount of iron or any other nutrient. Because brown sugar contains 5 to 10% molasses reintroduced during processing. Its value to some consumers is a richer flavor than white sugar. Health effects: sugar industry funding and health information. Main article: sugar marketing influence on health information and guidelines. Sugar refiners and manufacturers of sugar foods and drinks have sought to influence medical research and publish in public health recommendations with substantial and largely clandestine spending documented from the 1960s to 2016. The results of research on the health effects of sugary food, and drink differ significantly depending on whether the researcher has financial ties to the food and drink industry. A 2013 medical review concluded that unhealthy commodity industries should have no role in the information of national or international NCD non-communicable communicable disease policy. There have been similar efforts to steer coverage of sugar-related health information in popular media, including news media and social media. Obesity and metabolic syndrome. A 2003 World Health Organization technical report provided evidence that high intake of sugary drinks, including fruit juice, increase the risk of obesity by adding to overall energy intake. By itself, sugar is not a factor causing obesity and metabolic syndrome, but rather, when over-consumed, is a component of unhealthy dietary behavior. Meta-analysis showed that excessive consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages increase the risk of developing type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome, including weight gain and obesity in adults and children. Addiction. In 2018, systematic review concluded that the potential of sugar addiction was greater when it in combination with dietary fats. Hyperactivity. In 2019 meta-analysis found that sugar consumption does not improve mood but can lower alertness and increase fatigue within an hour of consumption. Some studies report evidence of causality between high consumption of refined sugar and hyperactivity. One review of low-quality studies of children consuming high amounts of energy drinks showed association with higher rates of unhealthy behaviors, including smoking and alcohol abuse, with hyperactivity and insomnia. Tooth decay. In 2013, WHO report stated that sugars are undoubtedly the most important dietary factor in the development of dental caries. A review of human studies showed that the incidence of caries is lower when sugar intake is less than 10% of total energy consumed. Nutritional displacement. The empty calories argument states that a diet high in added sugar will reduce consumption of foods that contain essential nutrients. This nutrient displacement occurs if sugar makes up more than 25% of daily energy intake. A proportion associated with poor diet quality and risk of obesity displacement may occur at low levels of consumption. Alzheimer's disease claims have been made of sugar Alzheimer's disease connection, but there is conclusive evidence that cognitive decline is related to dietary fructose or overall energy intake. Recommended dietary intake. The World Health Organization recommends that both adults and children reduce the intake of free sugars to less than 10% of total energy intake and suggests a reduction to below 5%. Free sugars include monosaccharides and disaccharides added to foods, and sugars found in fruit juice and concentrates, as well as in honey and syrups. According to the WHO, these recommendations were based on the totality of available evidence reviewed regarding the relationship between free sugars intake and body weight. Low and moderate quality evidence, and dental carries very low and moderate quality evidence. On May 20, 2016, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced changes to the nutrition facts panel displayed on all foods to be effective by July 2018. New to the panel is a requirement to list added sugars by weight and as a percent of daily value (DV) for vitamins and minerals. The intent of DVs is to indicate how much should be consumed for added sugars. The guide is that 100% DV should not be exceeded. 100% DV is defined as 50 grams. For a person consuming 2,000 calories a day, 50 grams is equal to 200 calories, and thus 10% of total calories. The same guidance as the World Health Organization. To put this in context, most 12-ounce, 335 milliliters cans of soda contain 39 grams of sugar. In the United States, a government survey on food consumption in 2013 through 2014 reported that for men and women aged 20 and older, the average total sugar intakes naturally occurring in foods and added were respectively 125 and 99 grams a day. Measurements. Various culinary sugars have different densities due to differences in particle size and inclusion of moisture. Domino sugar gives the following weight to volume conversions in United States customary units. Firmly packed brown sugar, 1 pound equals 2.5 cups or 1.3 liter per kilograms. I think 0.77 kgl. Granulated sugar, 1 pound equals 2.25 cups or 1.17 L per kg, 0.85 kgl. Unsifted confectioner's sugar, 1 pound equals 3.75 cups or 2.0 L per kg, 0.5 kgl. The Engineering Resources bulk density chart published in powder and bulk gives different values for the bulk densities. Sugar beet 0.80 gml, dextrose sugar 0.62 gml equals 620 kgm. Green. Granulated sugar, 0.70 gml. Powdered sugar, 0.56 gml. Society and culture. Manufacturers of sugar products such as soft drinks and candy and the Sugar Research Foundation have been accused of trying to influence consumers and medical associations in the 1960s and the 1970s by creating doubt about the potential health hazards of sucrose overconsumption while promoting saturated fat as the main dietary risk factor in cardiovascular disease. In 2016, the criticism led to recommendations that policymakers emphasize the need for high-quality research that accounts for multiple biomarkers on development of cardiovascular diseases. Sugar from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia.